Skinny Hightower is a Billboard charting jazz pianist who has released acclaimed works such as Blue Moon, Retrospect, and Emotions. He is currently gearing up for the release of his new album, Mind Over Matter, and subsequent tour. We will interview him now on 6 Zeros. Welcome, Skinny Hightower. How you doing today, brother?
Pretty good. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing amazing, man. It's awesome to have the opportunity to be able to interview such a talented and amazing pianist. What an amazing body of work. But let's get started. Let's start with the serious question that the streets want to know. Are you Steve Hightower's son?
Man, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. It'd probably be Junior if that was the case. But no, I used to get teased about that all the time in the military. But yeah, nobody's asked me that before.
So how did the name come to be?
I did a lot of things while I was in the military, but eventually landed on, doing jazz. And one of the chief warrant officers found out, and, he didn't know anything about jazz really. But he said, man, you like a skinny Mr. Hightower. And I just stuck with that. I loved it. And it's been with me ever since.
Now, did you have a fade or something, like the high top fade or something that made them think you were like Steve Hightower?
I had it for a little bit, yeah. During that time, I had a little military flat top, so it wasn't as sharp as his. His was that thing was pretty crispy.
Yeah, I think his was spray painted on. That's why.
Yeah.
No, that's just a joke. But anyways, tell us, how did you get into playing the piano?
It started a little bit when I was younger. I think at 8 years old, I kind of, first was drawn to it because of my mother. She was an amazing classical pianist. And I would just watch her and listen to what she did and watch what she did. I wasn't too interested at the time. So you skip all those years. And while I was in the military, I wanted to, produce in smooth jazz. So I did Emotions and use that as a launching pad, to try to get with some record labels. And they ended up signing me as an artist. So I was faced with the dilemma of, I have to choose an instrument to make, the thing that I perform with. And I chose piano. And to be honest, I did Retrospect and Blue Moon. And even with those two albums, I wasn't as serious about piano as I am now. So the actual love for piano is very recent, probably slightly after Blue Moon came out. A lot of people don't know that.
Wow. So that kind of makes sense because you also play the drums and the bass, correct?
Right. And it was drums first. Yeah, okay. I started playing drums when I was 2 years old. And then bass, I really picked that up at about 12. When my uncle used to show me.
Okay, so would you say that drums are like, that's your first love and that's your one true love?
Yeah, that was for sure my first love. I mean, it's the thing I can do naturally is breathing. Everything still requires work, but it's something about piano that I just love now. Like I've completely fallen in love with it and dedicated myself to this craft. So yeah.
To me, to hear that from you is very interesting because you play it so skillfully, and throughout these albums, like on Emotion, Cloud 9, Retrospect, and Blue Moon, the piano playing is expert level. So to hear that while you were making those albums, it wasn't your first love, that is very fascinating. I think that speaks to the level of talent that you do have. But you mentioned one thing. No problem. You mentioned one thing. You talked about smooth jazz and wanted to make smooth jazz. And a lot of publications put you in that smooth jazz category. But personally, when I listen to your music, I look at it like as the continuation of like what Miles Davis was doing in the 70s and the 80s. It's kind of, it's jazzy, but it's very funky. It has this like New York kind of swagger to it, but it's like jazzy and funky all at the same time. How would you classify your music from your perspective?
I think that's a really good observation. And I think what you're addressing is the feel of Blue Moon. I was, going through a phase where I studied 70s music very heavily during that time because it really got me through some emotional things I was going through at the time. So I basically just dove into it, and that bled into my style. And Blue Moon is like purely a 70s jazz influenced album, completely and totally. And then you hear a little bit, like a very slight amount of that in retrospect. But I think moving forward, and it's hard to speak on it now because people haven't heard it yet. But with the new album, Mind Over Matter, it's it's weird saying it's smooth jazz. I would rather say it's jazz that's smooth. The playing is a little bit outside, but it still returns back to home. But it still has a lot of the elements of smooth jazz. So I would classify my style in its totality as from here on out as jazz that is smooth. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's a great way of explaining it. Jazz that is smooth as opposed to smooth jazz. And like us
Right.
6 zeros, we have what we call the smooth jazz smoothness scale. And you
Yeah.
can
Uh-huh.
smoothen out so much that it loses the bop, it loses the feel. You can't nod your head to it. And that's
Right.
one thing that was really awesome about your music. And you can hear it. There's like a consistent I would say there's a consistent style that you have. You can hear it across the albums, but it
Mm.
has that bop. There's this bop to your music that I just haven't really heard any other
Mm.
place but from like the 70s. So that's interesting to hear that the 70s was your influence for Blue Moon. Now, who
Right.
were your influences in particular for Blue Moon? Who are you listening to?
It was a lot of Isaac Hayes, but I don't know if you're familiar with the Mizell brothers, but man, I was really heavy into them, and that kind of led me to Bobby Humphries and a lot of the stuff she did. But basically, anything that came out in the 70s, I was listening to it, and I literally had a document on my old computer, and it had all these different songs, and I broke down this what instrument is on this song. Okay, did they pan it to the right or to the left? How much did they use it? When? How did they use it? So um, everything that came out in the 70s that was in the soul and the funk uh, genre in particular, I was absorbing all of it.
Wow, that's amazing to hear that level of detail too, where you were seeing where they were panning
Right.
particular channels and listening to it to that level of detail. But you can hear it in the output. Your music is very well crafted. And to I just gotta throw this in here as a sidebar, man. You talked about emotions. The tracks storms. That's my joint. When people get on my nerves, I just go in the cut. I put storms on. Something about that track just
Yeah.
is it just mellows me out, man. I love that
Thank you.
song. So out of those four albums, like we talked about Retrospect and Blue Moon, you also brought up Emotions and Cloud Nine. Now I understand that your affinity for the piano is growing over time, but out of those four projects, which was your most favorite to work on?
That's a really good question. I would have to say Retrospect. Um, the Blue Moon was a great album to work on, but I was going through so much during the time that to put the word fun with it, it was of course enjoyable, but it was more of a way for me to vent and to release a lot of the things I was going through. As far as what was fun, Retrospect, I had a great time putting that together. Um, at the time, my playing was heavily influenced by Joe Sample, and I love his music. Um, and it was just really fun to put those ideas together and create a different type of sound that ended up being Retrospect.
Yeah, track number one was sample this, right?
Yeah, sample that. Yeah,
Yeah, sample that.
uh-huh.
My bad. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that was definitely an awesome project. But it's interesting to hear that you were going through so much during Blue Moon, but it ends up being your most successful album to date. Like you had
right.
3 Billboard charted singles on there, correct?
Yeah, three. I believe three. Two songs went number one. I believe two or three, and then there was another top three. I believe.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was
it was two top ones and
right.
one hit number three. It was Bittersweet, Blue Moon, and Now or Never. And Bittersweet
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
my jam. That joint, when that joint take off, it takes off and it's fun.
You know
And that,
what's funny?
what's up?
What's funny about that song? They chose it for radio, and I was like, man, that's you crazy. That's not even gonna work. It was one of my least favorite songs on the album, but I mean, it turned it out. It turned out to be one of the most popular songs on the album. So you have to appreciate other people's ears.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's a banger. That's kind of like Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones a little bit. Like the reverse.
Man,
So Quincy Jones did like Billie Jean, and Michael was like,
yeah,
"Hey, this the joint," and then they launched it, and the streets was
right.
like, "Yeah, we love Billie Jean." So that's interesting. Like Bittersweet, it's such a really, it's an awesome track. If you haven't heard Bittersweet, make sure you listen to it. I personally
Thank
feel
you.
like Bittersweet to me, if someone was like give me one song from Skinny Hightower that encompasses at least what I feel
Yeah.
Skinny Hightower is. It would be Bittersweet.
Hmm.
I like that.
That's
It's
interesting.
jazzy and funky. Like you paired, like you really paired those two
Hmm.
together extremely well on that album, and it's so elegantly stitched together. And I like how you have very elegant piano playing, and it's
Hmm.
like this elegance that's mixed into the bop of like African American music. It's just all these things, like a gumbo of music. And so I think
Yeah.
that's
Thank
what
you.
I really pull away when I listen to your music. I'm like, there's a lot going on here, and it always sounds very well put together, um,
Thank you.
very well
Yeah.
structured.
That song, man, I was really trying to get that Quincy Jones feel on Bittersweet. Like Quincy Jones, man, people don't understand how ridiculous his production was. Like if you put headphones on and listen to anything he produced for Michael Jackson, George Benson, like it's like a um, it's a different type of experience. Um, just hearing the intricacy of the way everything is panned and all the instrumentation he had going on is amazing. And I tried to implement that as best as I could in Bittersweet.
Now I need to give it another run now that now that you said that, because that is
Mhm.
facts. Like you could listen to, like, for instance, Smooth Criminal is a great example in
Oh
my
man,
opinion. Like you can listen to it in your
yeah,
car and all that, but when you
yeah,
listen to it with some headphones on, there's so much going on that track. There's like a
right,
that's going to panning and all this.
yeah,
It is a work of art.
it is, yeah. And everything he's done with a lot of his artists pay attention to it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Quincy is definitely amazing. Now, but uh you produce too, right?
Yeah, and it's funny, the album I'm work or just finished actually, and it'll be out, sometime in July. But one of the tracks is called Brazilian Nights, and it features this violinist. He's a hip hop violinist. He's played with 50 Cent, Snoop Dogg. Like he's pretty big time. Josh Vietti, um, and he played on one of the songs, and in exchange for him playing on the song, I produced two hip hop tracks for him, and one is actually on his his new album that he just released called the song's called Villain Era, I believe. So production is one of the things that it's one of my go-tos. I've been doing that for a long time. I enjoy it. I love doing R&B, hip hop, whatever I can get my hands on, really.
Yeah, you could hear your hip hop influences. Like I think on for emotions, I kind of felt some hip hop influence, like on Storms. Like the
Hmm.
drums is kind of like real hip hop feeling. But I
Right.
was
Yeah.
listening to one of your label mates, and it was the song just popped up one day, and it was Gary Honor, and I know on his latest album Momentum, you are on one of the tracks, but I
Yeah,
feel like you are on more than one track on that album.
I actually produced that whole album for him.
I thought so.
Yeah, I was featured on one of his songs, but yeah, he wanted me to go ahead and produce that album, and I had a really good time. And he's one of the most underrated saxophonists ever. Like that dude is really talented. Um, I think people will see that on his next album when he works on that.
Yeah, he definitely has skills, and Momentum is a solid album. There was a couple. I was listening to some of the tracks, and I'm like, this sounds just like Skinny Hightower. I think it
Yeah,
was Momentum and
yeah,
then Red Hot. Those two, I'm like,
right, yeah. Yeah,
it had,
momentum. I think momentum is probably like right in line with some of the stuff on Blue Moon. As far
yes.
as like now or never, it really has that feel to it.
You have like this way of like breaking down or doing feels that you don't really hear from a lot of different artists. So I heard some feels on that Momentum album. I was like, hold on, this is
Uh,
Skinny Hightower, and someone just slapped their name on it. And then I looked at the track listed and I saw that you were on there. So I was like, yeah, maybe you produced it. And so that's
yeah.
good to know that you did.
When you say feels, do you mean like the feels on the keys or like different instruments or?
Different instruments, just all
Okay,
around.
yeah,
Yeah. It's just
yeah.
you have go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that just comes from being a drummer at heart. You have a certain feel, and you kind of implement that into everything you do.
Yeah, it's definitely distinct. It sounds really awesome. So transitioning on, you have a new album that's coming up,
Hmm.
Mind Over Matter. and reading your description of it, it seems like this is gonna be one of your, it's hard to say on an instrumental album, one of your most introspective, but maybe it's gonna be one of the albums that pulls the most out of you. Would you say that's correct?
Man, that's a really, I like what you said, introspective. It really is. Like, um, I'm not gonna, sit here and tell the whole story, but before I even did this album, I had stepped away from the music for a long time after Blue Moon, and eventually came to the realization that I needed to work on myself as a person. I needed to work on my relationship with God, and going through all the things I went through to become a better person. That prepared me to be able to do to transition and be able to get serious about music the way I've always wanted to be. Um, so people will hear that the playing on this album is a little bit more serious. I actually took the time to really practice. Like I was practicing 8 hours a day. I took lessons from a good friend of mine now, John Gearing, amazing jazz pianist, probably one of the best I've seen in person. And that completely changed my style altogether. So this album to me is a culmination of everything I've been through, everything I've done, and my hope is that it really helps the people who listen to it.
That's amazing. Can we talk about the lead single at all?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Groove Factor.
Yeah, so Skinny shared with me the lead single, and to hear you say that you've been practicing and leveling up your skills and taking it even more seriously, it makes sense because as we were sending emails back and forth, I thought that you were layering piano tracks on top of each other. And he's like, no, I was playing that all at the same time. There's a
Yeah,
part in Groove Factor where there's a trumpet solo and then it goes into Skinny playing. And it sounds like there's keys, there's a chord track, and it sounds like there's a melody track. This dude is doing it
yeah.
with at the same time. When you hear it, it's gonna trip you out. I really thought it was multiple tracks. So that is a great first start to the album. And if
Thank
that's
you.
if that's the level that you're coming with, then I'm excited to hear the rest. But what you said, I wanted to bring up Groove Factor just to
Hmm.
emphasize what you said. You can definitely hear the skill increase in there. I don't
Hmm.
think I've ever heard, or maybe I've heard it before, but that really sounded like two tracks, man.
Man, so people know that I was I am still a huge fan of Michel Petrucciani. A lot of people don't really know about him. Some people have kind of sought him out since I've mentioned him a few times. But I started studying him. Then I worked my way up to Keith Jarrett. Then I started studying people like Brad Meldau, Vladimir Horowitz, who's they said he's basically the greatest pianist of all time, across any, dead or alive, any genre. And then I finally arrived on Chick Corea, somebody I never used to listen to, but after studying all those people, I understand Chick Corea, and a lot of the things that he does, I kind of relate to that. So I try to implement the influences of all of these, these straight ahead jazz pianists into smooth jazz. So that's why it sounds a little different. It's not the same way that everybody else is playing piano, if that makes sense, in this genre.
Yeah, you like on Groove Factor, the way it starts. I use this term multiple times throughout the interview, but even more so on Groove Factor, the piano playing is elegant. It almost sounds like ballroom piano playing, but on a jazz track. It's very complex, it's very emotive and expressive, and like it's clear as day on Groove Factor. It's a cool highlight to the jazz, like funk, backing track. You just came in there with these. I even use that in the email. I'm like, yo, those keys are elegant. And when you listen to this, folks, when you listen to Groove Factor, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. These keys are very elegant. And to hear that, you were studying Chick Corea, that makes a lot of sense, because for to play for Miles Davis and to come after Herbie Hancock, that's a beast right there.
Man, people people do understand. He was, in my mind, he's always going to be one of the legends of the instrument. But it goes back to the intention of what you're doing with your craft. I told a few people about this, but when I was practicing and preparing to make this album, I started studying Kobe Bryant, because of his dedication to his craft. He would talk about, not just, his approach to whether he could drive a certain way or whatever, but he would study the angles on the court, where if he was in a certain position on the court, he could, he had a better chance to drive, like his percentage to drive to the hole would increase depending on where he was on the court. Just little nuances like that. And I applied that to piano. And I said, what can I do to increase my skill and pay attention to the nuances in such a way that my skill increases in the shortest amount of time? And that's basically what I did. I don't want to, go over the particulars, but, I basically immersed myself into the instrument and worked on it every single day. Waking up 3, 4 in the morning, and I would practice like it was my job. And I think the most important thing is that I didn't want to run away from the groove, and I think that title was fitting because the playing, I don't care how intricate it is or elegant or complex, it has to have that groove. If it doesn't have the groove, then it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I think that's the underlying, I would say, the backbone of all African American music. Like, we're all about the groove. When you get rid of the groove, it's like, what is this? We don't really, resonate with music without the groove. But to the Kobe reference, I think that was that just speaks to how amazing Kobe is, because he influenced me in a lot of different ways too. Because when I hear about how he was always in the gym early, he was always outworking everyone, he was setting the tone, he was being the leader. And as being in the military, like, you have to set, like, you were a sergeant, right? You have to set the tone for everybody that's under you. You have to be like, if everybody could do 10 pull-ups, you got to do 12. You know, you always got to set the bar high. And Kobe always did that. He always strove to be the best, and he put in the work to do it. And so when I heard a speech he gave about that, and I said, dude, that's what you have to do to be excellent. It's not just going to come to you. You have to. Excellence is not a destination. You can never reach it. It's like a set of behaviors and practice that you do, and the output is excellence. But the second you stop doing the motions to be excellent, it's going to go away.
Right. It's the journey. It's part of the journey. Like, I feel like I'm never going to arrive at the destination. Kind of like what you referred to. You know, it's a daily process. Even though the album's done, I'm still practicing. And you know, getting ready for shows. Like, whatever stage I'm at, I'm not going to stop working to improve and become the best I can be. And I think if we can take that from Kobe and all the other greats and apply that to whatever we're doing, especially as a people, there's nothing that could stop us.
Absolutely not. But did I just hear shows? Did Skinny Hightower say shows?
Yeah. It's all in the works. Yeah, it's in the works for later this year, early next year. Yeah.
So I was wondering, I'm like, how far are we going to take the concept mind over matter? Because for a while you didn't like playing live shows, right?
Right. Yeah, I didn't. I always felt like piano was I wasn't at home behind the piano. So when I was performing live, it felt forced. If that makes any sense. Man, I had to really eradicate that thinking and that notion with the preparation of Mind Over Matter. If you listen to these, if you can hear it in Groove Factor, but if you pay close attention to all of the songs on this album, they're written in a way that three of us could play on stage. Just a trio. It's drums, bass, piano. Even though there's other instrumentation on the songs, they're all written in a way to where I could perform them in a trio, because I wanted these songs to be basically an advertisement for the performance. If you listen to the songs on the album, you would know, okay, this isn't going to be too far removed from the performance, even if it's three people on stage. So it's really a matter of me having to get over that feeling of not being at home on the instrument. I just had to, work on my craft, take it serious, and record this album in a way to where it's basically performance ready.
That makes a lot of sense, because I'm a horn player and I feel more comfortable playing a trombone than a bass. Like, I just picked up the bass about 3 years ago, and I love the bass, but I'm not at the point where I feel fully comfortable to just go out, because when I play, I want to play like I have to display a level of excellence, and if if it sounds good to other people, but to me, I'm like, oh, I didn't hit that right enough. I didn't hit on the one good enough. So that makes perfect sense, because I always wondered, why does Skinny not take this out on the road? And that makes sense, because you just wasn't where you wanted to be at on the keys, and now you are. So are you actually setting up the dates now, or are you waiting?
Yeah, we're setting up some of the dates now. We've got something going on in Long Beach later this year. We're doing a Clifton Square show also. So it's interesting because people haven't heard the album yet. But all of the stuff is in the works, so that by the time the songs have gained momentum on the radio, then we're out on the road. So I don't want to set it up too early, but I also don't want to set it too late, if that makes sense. I want to hit that sweet spot. Being that nothing has been released yet, I want to make sure I kind of give it a little bit of time before we book a lot of dates.
Yeah, that's actually a cool strategy. So the songs are going to be working, like, for instance, you're going to be dropping something maybe this month, and then the momentum's going to build. And when someone's like, hey, I want to see Skitty live, well, it's already going down.
Right. Yeah.
Now, when you said Long Beach, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with what you were saying. Yeah,
When you said Long Beach, are you talking about this Long Beach, California, right here?
yeah, yep. We're gonna
Oh,
be at
yeah.
Harvell's, and then we'll kind of just branch out from there. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm definitely there. And this could be a sidebar, but also if you guys haven't check out Spaghettini too. That's a nice venue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the spot. So the last transition to the last part of the interview.
Hmm.
You recently wrote a book of poetry called The Climb.
Yeah.
And when you get from the keys and actually go into words and really express your opinion in words where people can read it and understand it and digest it, it becomes even more intimate. You
Hmm.
really begin to reveal yourself. And I really feel like with The Climb, you did that. What was your motivations behind writing The Climb?
It actually, it's a lot of it is a series of lessons that I've learned, not just in life, but in this particular time of working on this album. But also some different things I've observed. There's a lot of different topics. It talks about how we're fascinated with fame and trying to keep up with everybody else. How we you know get a little bit sidetracked by social media and certain things like that. It's really just a series of thoughts meant to help other people think about things that they may not be really thinking about.
Yeah, there was a couple that really stood out to me, and what I really liked about it is that you were uncompromising. You just told a story about how you see the world from the eyes of a black man. You didn't try to
Hmm.
sanitize it. You didn't try to make it more universal. Like some of the poems I like were like barbershop, and how when you get a fresh cut, how you feel, how it
Hmm.
boosts your swag and all that.
Right.
That's right on the money. That's like something that's like as a African American man, I really like resonated with that. Same with
Hmm.
soul food, and then you
Yeah.
also took it from like our cultural staples there to like social issues like black on black, where you talk about how you would like to see more unity in the community,
Right.
and then also it was, I believe it's I think of my people, and that's
Hmm.
where you talk about how you wish we would divert some of our funds from the shiny trinkets over into
Right.
more long-term investments. So when I was reading those poems, I'm like, I'm really getting to know Skinny Hightower more, and I'm also getting to understand how he thinks. Now I got to
Mm.
ask you a question on those last two, on black on
Yeah.
black on black, and on I think of my people. Do you think that some of those issues that you're seeing, they're symptoms of a larger issue? Like we have an overall bigger sickness, and the inability to, or would say the instant gratification and the self-hate we see in the community are symptoms of that larger disease that we have as a community? Sorry, that was a word salad.
No. Yeah. I think in part, yeah. When you look at the bigger picture, there's so much going on, and that has been going on in our society. That has an effect on our people, and a negative effect. And I think some of the ways we kind of express that can be, I guess, misconstrued,
Yes.
and they can also be let out incorrectly in some ways, and we can't. It's hard to put blame on other people. In one of my poems, "Let's Start a Riot," that I think that's a
Mhm.
good illustration of a lot of the frustration that we deal with. And there's one part where I said it's hard to condone the actions of somebody who's doing these things if you don't understand what they're going through. But
Yes.
but if you do understand where they're going, what they're going through, and where they're coming from, it's hard not to condone their actions. So it's always two sides of it, and I think I think in part it's just understanding what's the real issue affecting that person or that community.
Yeah, it's like you if you're a doctor, I use this metaphor. It's like there your cylinder might be leaking and you could put a bucket under it and capture the water, but until you
Right.
actually go up and see that there's a hole in the roof, you're not really fixing the
Exactly.
problem or understanding the problem. You might just be, like that bucket might be that gold chain,
Right.
or yeah. So it's but to get to the larger point, it's like you really hit on some very important topics in the community, and I really respected that. I like that
Mm.
you just kept it true to who you are, and you really got to show us a side of Skinny that we don't really get from the Keys.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, we all, we're going through this life. We've all experienced, different things in our own lives, and we can, once we put those ideas together and those experiences together, then we can start to understand the big picture. And that's a little bit of what this book does. Like you just get to see a lot of the things that I've experienced, and maybe that can help you get an understanding of some of the things you're seeing or some of the things that you're going through.
Yeah, and to get back to a point you said, I think it was, I forgot the name of the poem, but you did mention crabs in a bucket, and I think that
Oh
you
yeah, the
said, I
climb.
think, yeah, it
Yeah.
was the cloud. Okay, I thought so because you said as we
Uh-huh.
rise higher, higher, there's crabs in the bucket. I think, like when you read through the poems, I think that for I'm going to speak specifically to the community. Like you
Right.
can read
Okay.
the poems, and which my thing is this: your takeaway from the poem should be, okay, you see the issues. Now, what are we gonna do to fix it? Like
Exactly.
we could wallow in the sorrow till we're
Right.
blue in the face.
Hmm.
But what are we gonna do? We know about the black on black crime. We know about the police brutality. We know about all these different issues in our community. What are we gonna do, especially as black men? Not to get off
Right.
on too big of a tangent, but just
Hmm.
we as black men, what are we going to do to fix our communities and uplift our communities to make sure our women and our children are safe? Now,
Exactly.
people could talk about what they think the issue is, um, where the issues stem from, or all
Hmm.
that. But at the end of the day, it's our job as black men to create our community. Period.
Right.
Point blank. And I
Right.
think that's clear in the climb.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think it does start in the home, and that's a responsibility that rests on our shoulders. And this book, I wouldn't say that it's a book full of answers. It's actually a book full of questions, just to make us think. Let's come up with the answer. Let's see what works, what doesn't work. So it's not necessarily saying this is the solution, but it's just like you said, it makes you think about what can we do in order to solve this. We got a leaky roof. Let's not just put a bucket under this. Let's work together and climb up there and fix the real issue and see how we can move forward. So yeah, I understand what you're saying completely.
Man, that is amazing. Thank you for writing that amazing book of poems. And everyone, make
Thank
sure
you.
you check out the climb. Closing out, where can people reach you?
So I'm not really on social media, but you can go to my website, skinnyhightower.com. From there, you can get in touch with me directly. Um, I might get on social media again at some point, but right now I'm pretty cool on it. But yeah, skinnyhightower.com, and you can get in touch with me directly.
Hey man, you're missing all the goofy dance videos, man.
Yeah, man, I'm missing a lot of stuff, but eventually I'll get to it, man. I got a lot of work to do, so I'm gonna stay focused.
Absolutely. Keep up the good work, Skinny Hightower, man. It was a pleasure interviewing you,
Man,
and
I appreciate it.
I'm really, really, really looking forward to Mind Over Matter. We have a segment where we call Whip Appeal, where we take songs out into the car and take it out to the streets to see how it sounds in the whip. And we're definitely going to take Mind Over Matter out. Okay.
Man, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me, man. I was really stoked for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. All right. I'm your host, Jay. Thank you for watching 6 Zeros. We're signing off.